hate most that we think that our challenges are unique to cybersecurity as opposed to pretty normal historical human challenges, and we don't look outside of our domain often enough for learnings and potential solutions.
Welcome to Audience First, a podcast for tech marketers looking to break out of the echo chamber to better understand their audience and turn them into loyal customers. Every week, Dani Woolf has brutally honest conversations with busy tech buyers about what really motivates them, the things they hate that vendors do, and what you can do about it. Get access to practical information on how to build authentic relationships with your audience. Listen to and talk with your buyers, and apply real customer insights to your strategies and tactics. You owe it to the world to unmute your mic. Are you ready?
Welcome to another episode of Audience First. We have yet again a very special guest with us today. Today we have Dutch Schwartz on the call with us. Dutch, welcome to the show.
Thanks. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks.
Are you recovering from reInvent?
I actually just had a couple of meetings, so I was really kind of like a smoke jumper, right? I came in, I talked to a couple of folks, but I was not in the officially like part of the meetings, you know what I mean? So I have been in years past going from, meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and it can get really tiring. It's energizing because you're meeting tons and tons of people, but it can get tiring. But no, I just had a couple of meetings that were sort of adjacent, if that makes sense, because people happen to be there. So I came in for a couple of meetings. So no, I this time, Reinforce, yes. I was pretty exhausted after Reinforce, which is our more, security specific one in my case. But no, luckily I just had a couple of kind of meetings that were sort of off to the side. So yeah, no, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, for sure. So Dutch, tell me a little bit about yourself.
What I functionally do is act as a cloud security strategist. So what that means really in a day-to-day, week in, week out kind of situation is I mostly work with CISOs. I mean, also, architects and the rest of the teams, but sort of like my typical conversation would be with the CISO at a large enterprise company. And that's only relevant because sometimes it's, of course, different for SMB, or if I was in NGOs or charities or other things. You have a little bit different kind of customers and so forth. But anyways, yeah, so cloud security strategy is kind of the least amount of words that I can use to describe what that looks like, right? So that is somewhere on my cloud journey. In my case, the folks that I'm talking to are probably many years, or at least several years into a cloud journey, and they're still moving thoughtfully, taking pieces, whether that be workloads or whatever, or creating new things in the cloud. And so really, in that sense, it's my responsibility to, along with my team, to kind of just guide them, right? To give them options like, hey, we don't do all of the things, right? And so here are the things that we might support you with. And so a lot of that is kind of asking lots of questions and doing lots of whiteboarding, trying to understand not only what we're trying to do, because we're really good at describing what, but why we're trying to do that thing. So that's really kind of my job, is to ask a lot of why questions, and understand what does this tie to from a business standpoint, right? And that's really kind of been the vibe over the last few years, right? Is sort of not keyboard up, but right, business down, if that makes sense. So that's what I do kind of in a day-to-day. And why do I do it? I enjoy the opportunity to kind of, I hope, create a path for folks, because there's still a lot of learning in cloud. And again, not specific, doesn't matter which, a vendor or anything, but just the acceleration and adoption of the cloud, there's still a lot of growth. I mean, so it feels a little bit like me being old to the mid 90s in terms of networking, right? Mm-hmm. Where things weren't really all sort of settled. And that's a fun time. It's chaotic. It can feel chaotic when you're in the midst of it sometimes, but it's super exciting because there's all kinds of new ideas popping off, right? And so there's moments like that. And I say moments, but I mean, they'll last a few years, where you can really come in, and when you're able to pull from multiple kind of domains, that in moments like that, it's really fun, right? And it's really useful. And I lived through it again, kind of in the storage realm. And then networking kind of got, for me anyway, pretty kind of stayed and sort of blasé. And then I went into security a number of years ago. So that's why I do it. So I hope that I'm solving problems. I mean, that's certainly how I think about what I do. So that's my intention anyway, is to help people solve problems.
What do you hate most about the cybersecurity industry?
What do I hate most? I hate most that we think that our challenges are unique to cybersecurity as opposed to pretty normal historical human challenges, and we don't look outside of our domain often enough for learnings and potential solutions. And here's what I mean. So the first CIOs were arguably in 1981. The white paper on this topic and the book came out around the same time. And interesting, the white paper, I could find it, has a really nerdy title because, of course, we're super techie. I went and found that because I thought this is not the first time we've lived through this kind of a moment, right? Where the role and the function of a CISO and therefore the teams are starting to kind of come into more focus. And I went back to my own history. I'm like, well, we went through this in IT, and so there's, I think, a natural narrowing that goes, and you're like, oh, these are my unique snowflake problems. No, they're not. These problems have been run into over and over because large groups of people have these kinds of challenges. It's just, so that's what I wish. I wish that we would spend more time. I wish we had more industrial organizational psychologists. I wish we had more anthropologists, the social sciences, other sciences, frankly. So I love it when people come in, from different backgrounds, because I think it's way more likely that if you have a completely different background, Dani, you're going to have not even a unique, but you're going to take something that and apply it uniquely, right, to a problem that you and I are facing. So that's what I think. What about you?
What do I hate most about? Wow, nobody's asked me that.
Well, I'd love to know your point of view. You asked these questions, so I'd love to hear what you think.
Way to turn the table. Wow. Well, there are a few things. Let me see what most ticks me off these days. The ineffective methods of communication, not just from the business side, aka marketing, sales, but also vice versa. The tech to the business side as well. Just so these
what do you think
silos of communication.
Yeah, what's driving that? Is that an unintentional outcome? Like, why does that happen?
I think it's unintentional. I think it's lack of curiosity. Largely lack of curiosity. I know that's a huge assumption to make about people, but I think it's stress as well. Stress in the industry to get places quickly, which cause people to bypass research and bypass some legwork that's required to communicate efficiently. I think it's lack of resources and training in how to communicate efficiently and effectively.
Do you feel like that's on both sides? And
yeah,
if I say it's two sides, right? It's on both sides.
Yeah, both sides. And again, it's siloing. If you say both sides, it's as an industry, I think that's an issue across the board in different functions and roles and departments.
So from a formal education and informal training programs, are again, unintentionally refocusing on the wrong things, so we're not teaching these? Do you think that's part of that gap?
I'm not sure we're teaching the wrong things per se. Well, I think we might be teaching some outdated things, not necessarily the wrong things in some instances. I don't think some things are prioritized. You could get the resources to learn effective communication and learn how to research and learn how to speak to people and learn how to translate, words or translate concepts into words and other concepts that resonate with people that matter to you. I just don't think that's prioritized. But again, those are my opinions and it could be different. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things, because to your second point around training, I suspect that we've lost something in terms of, in the 90s, you could come in and there was tons of opportunities, there was tons of programs, right, that I recall, right? So most large companies had tons of, not even just internships, but also training programs, right? And there's a lot of, we didn't call it that at the time, but today I guess we call it upskilling and reskilling. Like it was just sort of a standard thing. There was just lots of training options. That's what I recall, right? At big companies. I came out of the military and went to a big company. I started a small company, 2 in a row, actually, I guess 2 startups in a row. But then as soon as I got to, and I expected that to be bootstrap, like normal, what we would call hip pocket training in the military, right? So you just learn stuff on the fly and you teach me and go, great. And then I just run with it, right? And that was pretty normal to me. But as soon as I got to a large corporation, there was just tons of training opportunities, about communication, and about different um, leadership programs. There's just tons and tons of stuff. And I feel like as I lived through 99, 2000, right, the .com, that stuff got slashed, right? And I feel like to a degree, and again, I don't have evidence, but my recollection is most of that stuff never came back. And then we lived through 2008, 2009. And so then it absolutely got crushed, right? And so I think we lose something from a mentorship, and formal training, because they both have a place, right? Some people, because of the modalities, like they prefer to learn, right? I certainly have trained folks who they really want a structured training program, and kind of a classic, what are we about to learn? And here's my agenda. And some people just absorb that way. Some people like to read it first and then hear it from you, and then put, whatever that execution, drive the car or put their hands on the keyboard, whatever that kind of that functional learning is. And then some people learn better informally by asking questions, and they're more comfortable, right? And some people just don't want to do that. But I feel like we must be losing out by not having that kind of robustness of options that we used to have. So I think that's part of it. And then you kind of touched on this a little bit. My sense is that we've leaned really heavily into the technology, which I love, full stop. So don't write me angry emails. Huge fan, right? But what I hear from, especially folks who've been even maybe in the middle, what they feel like maybe is kind of the middle of their cybersecurity journey, and they tell me they didn't receive training, to your point. Well, let's say they have a degree. They didn't get a lot of training around communication skills, interpersonal skills, how to build a business case, all these things that we say soft skills, and I'll talk about that in a second. But those are critical if you decide to. Now, if you want to be a cybersecurity architect or an engineer, incident responder forever, cool. Like, I'm not suggesting anybody needs to make a move, but for folks I talk to who are kind of on a journey, whether it be up or sideways, they've told me pretty explicitly, hey, I never got that. I never got that either in formal training, in university or wherever they went. Again, maybe that's changing more today, and so I have to kind of dip in and ask other folks. But that's what I hear is that they feel like they're not getting those skills. So then, to your point, maybe if I'm a super self-starter, right, I'm going to go try to learn those either through a mentor or through a community, through, take your pick, some kind of association that I'm in. But that really puts the onus on the individual learner. Some people aren't as comfortable, or maybe don't even aware, like how do I start learning? If you don't know, they never taught you how to learn, then it's really hard.
Yeah.
And certain education systems, I would suggest the American education system in public schools, and I've graduated public schools, but if my parents were always most concerned about, are you learning how to learn? I don't really care if you learn the facts, it's fine. My dad was really, really specific. Like, are you learning how to learn? That's what I care about. That's the critical thing, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think we teach critical thinking and the scientific method and tools that would help people teach themselves. So now you're like, well, it's no surprise that people feel this sort of, either angstiness or frustration or being let down to a degree because we didn't give them the training and the coaching and the tools early in their career that they could then apply later, and then frankly pull up others. So that's my thought on that.
No, I love it. And it takes me to kind of my next point is that there's focus, and I think it's a big issue and irks me a little bit, is making things harder than they should be. The focus on complexity versus simplicity. And I think that's just huge in this industry right now, which is a problem. And there are a lot of reasons.
Tell me more about that. Give me an example without don't back the truck up. But give me an example of how that plays out. Like, how do you see that kind of in the industry? Like, what would that look like?
By the way, I'm totally stealing back the truck up. I love that.
Sure.
Well, if you view it from my lens of the world, the marketing world, and I'm going through this right now with my own message, right? Just say what it is. Simply. Simply just say what it is in clear terms. Like, you don't have to make up new words for it. You don't have to make up some quirky, theme or, tagline. Just say what it is. From a product perspective, make the journey simple, right? Make the product simple to use, doesn't have to necessarily be easy, but it needs to be simple and practical and pragmatic. From a training perspective, learn how to learn. Facts will come, learn how to learn, do it pragmatically. I'd say from overall an industry, right, there's so much technology, which creates complexity in and of itself, right, for the buyer. So how do people already trying to solve some massive challenges and life-threatening challenges in some regards, right? Because even if it's from a financial perspective, that could be not life-threatening. How do we reduce that complexity for the buyer with all the stuff that we're throwing at them? And that's the whole point of this podcast and my initiative is like, how do we reduce complexity as much as possible through understanding?
Right.
So I think that's overall kind of my thinking is in my beef with the industry is that people just need to simplify as much as, and it's easy to say, right?
Yeah.
It's not easy
So
to do.
what's a way to plus one that, how do you, if you're on the, if you're acquiring technology, in addition to highlighting where there's a gap, right? And hey, I wish, how do we highlight when people are doing a great job of it? Like, hey, this is what excellent looks like. Like, do this thing, do these kinds of things. Like, how do we shine a light on those moments? When people are actually, to your point, talking about it, simply highlighting what it is, and then you make like what's good look like? Like, do we have examples of that?
Maybe I'm going to start a swipe file because I have an example of what bad looks like. I have
what's good look like, right? I mean, but if you're training somebody, right, I'd want to know, like, what's good look like?
Yeah.
Not pejoratively, but like, I mean, even if it's notional at this point, like, what would good, if I guess we can back the truck up again, right? What would good look like? What would good look like? And then we can start looking for instances of that, or instances that are like, oh, this is the right path. Like, we're getting close, to what that looks like.
Yeah. I have a few examples. I'll list them here. But I think more importantly for the practitioners listening in on this episode, what does the good look like? I urge those who are listening to share good examples because we're good at sharing bad examples and flipping the script and showing the alternative, but showing what good looks like is great. And I've had a few instances where buyers show me what good looks like from either an outreach perspective.
I've heard you do that. And at least the ones I recall were impromptu, right?
Yeah.
Which gets you kind of a different spark, right? So, but I'd be interested, like let's build a catalog of good also. So, or start to build somewhere where there would be a catalog of good. So if I was that self-motivated learner, and I was just coming into insert thing here, marketing and communications manager, and early in my career, I could go somewhere and be like, oh, look, here's 20 examples of what good looks like. So then it's not just sort of my opinion or my view of what, like, hey, look, this is kind of what industry folks are telling me, and they're ultimately the people I'm trying to connect with. Maybe I should reshape, again, to your point earlier, right? The language, the simplicity, the messaging, that might be cool to see.
Well, I mean, so you tell me, what's one thing that you've experienced that was great in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, so I will absolutely go right back to somebody else because it's not my idea, right? So Olivia Rose, so multi-time CISO, big fan, and I did something on this recently, and I can't remember where I even heard it from her the first time. It could have been in person. It might have been on the pod. I don't remember, but she was, I think, and it was kind of impromptu, but somebody was asking her sort of the same question. And she said, look, I want to hear three things. Okay. So again, as a CISO at scale, right? Number one, what is the thing? And when I coach other people, I'm like, tell it to me in 15 words or less, or else it gets too lengthy, right? So I have to kind of bound it a little bit. So, because it forces you to be really, you have economy of the words, right? That each word has to land as if we were writing a play or as if we were writing a joke or a tagline. Right? Each word has to be exactly the minimal amount of words. Boom. So what is this thing? Number one. Number two, what challenge does it solve? 20 words. That's all you get. 20 words. What does it solve? If it's going to take you 4 sentences, you're too long, right? 20 words or less. And then the third thing, and this is what Olivia says, and I agree with her, having now sort of put it in my list of questions to ask. And what does this mean to me if I'm the peer of that CISO? And I like that kind of shift, right? Because if we say just the CISO, again, the presumption is, we're all super technically, deep, which is not wrong, by the way. But so then I can kind of stay in my nerd lane, right? And still keep using acronyms and stuff. But what does it mean to the peer, right, of the CISO? Meaning that's sort of proxy for saying, what does it mean to the business, right? I love also Steve Zalewski's line when he was the CISO for Levi's, when he would say, how does this help me sell more jeans? As a security vendor, if you can't come and tell me as the CISO how this helps me sell more jeans, then you need to wait until you can tell me that, because I need to know that, right? And I love that. Again, these are simple things, but it's trying to shift the discussion, right? Because the technical discussion will happen. I had a CISO approach me, this is probably a few years ago, and I was at an event, probably doesn't matter, it was probably like an Avanta style event, where it was just CISOs, and I guess so I was there representing a security vendor, and he came up. I sort of knew him through other people, but I didn't know him really personally. And he's like, "Hey, tell me about something, da 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 da." And I said, "Hey, do you want me to like dive into the tech?" He goes, "No." He's like, "I'm just going to presume the tech works kind of as you're describing, or you wouldn't be around for X number of years." He's like, "And if it gets interesting," he's like, "don't worry, my people will vet that. Tell me about you. Like, why are you guys doing this? Why is this your approach?" And that's a great reframing right there, right? Because it's so easy, because it's tangible, to go right down to the key. I said the keyboard, but go right down to the white paper, go right down to the spec sheet, go right down to the keyboard, right? Because humans just tend to do that, right? We like certainty. The timing is important, right? If I don't understand your challenge, you personally, and also in scope, like for your org, how could I possibly give you a good recommendation? But I find people come unprepared, and to be candid, again, like the community is often unprepared. Having been on kind of the different sides of this equation, there have been moments where I've asked an executive or team of pretty senior executives, "Hey, how does this map to a specific business initiative?" And then there's semi-awkward silence, because they're really comfortable telling me their strategic security initiatives, which is cool. I'm happy to vibe out on that, right? But I'm like, well, how does this tie to one of your business initiatives? And we're back to that gap, right? Because we're so fixated on, I'm going to do X, Y, Z because of insert matrix, insert framework. I love all those things, by the way, right? I talk about for hours, but that's not the business problem. It doesn't help me if I'm the CMO or the CRO or that VP of product and in the Nordics. How does that help them? And so that's, I think the critical question is that third one. How does it help the peer of the CISO? So does that land with you?
Yeah, 100%. I want you to take me through a little bit how you prepare for these advisory calls, because a lot of the listeners, for Audience First and also for the other podcast, What the Fuck Did I Just Read, want to shift from being BDRs or AEs to advisors for the buyer.
Sure.
So what would be some practical steps to shift from being a seller in quote unquote to a trusted advisor like you?
Yeah. So it takes time. I mean, so to be fair, right? So you have to put some reps in. So I think it starts with, you mentioned this earlier, and I will just plus 1,000 you, and that is, you have to be authentically curious. Like, you have to be interested, right? You have to be interested in what not only the other person, but whatever their reason for being, in the world is. You got to be interested in that, because if you don't, it's really quick to, a 4 or 5-year-old can tell immediately if the person really means the thing they're saying, or they don't mean the thing they're saying, right? So you have to be authentic, right? And so you have to be really interested in, like, I don't know anything about the logistics industry, Dandy. And I have to want to know about that to connect with you, right? Because it's very likely that that's something that's important to you, if that's the type of company that you're in. So one is simply do the research. Read up on the company, read what because especially now, right? There's things are awfully visible, right? Let's just do simple things, right? Read their annual report or 10K, depending on which flavor you have, or the analogy, depending on which, if you're in another country, right? But read that. Right, read their quarterly reports, their 10Qs, if they have one, if they're going to be a U.S.-based company. But there's an analogy in most countries. Read the comments, the public comments from the company, and then those are all like just simple research that you can do. Try to understand the industry, right? Because your challenges will feel different to you if you're in mining and manufacturing than if you're in energy, than if you're in healthcare, right? So you have to spend some time trying to get to understand that space that they're in, because their challenges maybe they'll be overlapping, maybe they'll be similar, but they'll feel unique, right, to them. And what are their constituents or customers care about? Because that's really, you're all in service to that, right? I mean, so when you're talking with somebody in healthcare life sciences, that is a very different vibe in a conversation than if I'm talking to somebody in the defense industry, or if I'm talking with somebody who's in media and entertainment, right? So you've got to try to get to, like, what does this mean to your people? Like the actual thing that we're doing for a living, and understand that. So what you bring to the table potentially is context. And I take that from a conversation where I had a sort of an aha moment, or as Samuel L. Jackson said, right, an epiphany, right, in the movie Pulp Fiction, where I was leaving a meeting with a really large it doesn't really matter, but a really large financial services corporation that will be relevant in a second. And as we're leaving, I asked the CISO, hey, just curious, like, why do you take meetings? Like, what would lead you to take a meeting? And this is the financial side, because you could pretty much buy anybody if you wanted to. I mean, you have the access to capital. You could buy a lot of solutions, and frankly, a lot of companies. Mm-hmm. And his answer was really thoughtful. He said, I can pull my phone out right now and hit up, 10 other CISOs that are all in my space, because we all know each other. I could go to ISAC or whatever their version of that is, right, in their space, and talk to 60, 70 people. He said, how many do you know? Mm-hmm. And more importantly, are they all in different fields, like mm-hmm. based on your background? And that was a really interesting observation from his standpoint. And I said, well, it's certainly hundreds, and it's a lot of different industries, and at this stage in my career. And he said, right, so who has better context, me or you? He's like, you do. And I thought that was really forward thinking. I said, so was there a specific thing today? Because we weren't really even talking, because I said, take tech out of it, like a specific technology. And he said, I had unknown unknowns, right? The Rumsfeld thing, right? I wasn't really sure. He's like, I had something happen in my environment, and I just mm-hmm. felt my spider senses were tingling. He goes, and when that happens, and I'm talking to my directs and, my teams, and I feel like something's sort of unsettled, or I'm not really sure where it's going to head, he's like, I will bring in like 4 or 5 people like you. And again, it's not about me specifically, but I mean, that type of person where I'm looking, I don't know really what I'm missing, and I want people to give me some context. And sometimes that's as simple as, I've seen this issue, or I think maybe I've seen this issue, and it happened to be in energy, and now you're seeing the same thing in financial services, right? Those conversations, again, if they're authentic and genuine, and transparent, that moves people forward, right? It's a totally different conversation than, hey, look, I have this can and it's green and red and it does these things. I mean, that's very 1950s to me anyway.
I don't remember, by the way. Yeah, it helps. And I don't remember the last time I had Mountain Dew. Holy moly. What nostalgia.
It has the most caffeine, Dani, of any really? Off the shelf. Yes, that's why do you think people drink Mountain Dew?
I have I know Monster, but I don't know.
That's fair, but there's a lot of other stuff. I mean, so like of those like terrible chemicals, like Mountain Dew. Now I'm going to have angry calls from people, but no, that's why it was always like Diet Mountain Dew and Mountain Dew. Like my old days, like I'm sitting, I had this great picture of, I was working on a wireless project, and we were about to go live, right? And they were filming it because it was like, it was a higher pressure situation, let's say. And I just remember like looking over at my senior SA, and it was this great picture because we've been working all night, right? And he literally has like a giant, like, coffee espresso, like on one hand, and a Diet Mountain Dew in the other, and 2 keyboards. And it's like the classic, I wish I had that. I don't know where that picture is, but no, Mountain Dew was always like, that was kind of a litmus test. If you weren't really a tech team, you weren't really a tech team if there wasn't access to Mountain Dew somewhere. I guess this is maybe 10, 15 years ago, but everybody had, because it had the most caffeine, in the same way that Dunkin' Donuts has the most, or at least it did. When I was in the Army, everybody got Dunkin' Donuts, not Starbucks, because Dunkin' Donuts had more caffeine.
Oh, so wow.
We ferret that out, right? You got to have the caffeine injection.
Oh, so. I love caffeine, by the way. So, hey, no judgment here. All right, so this is a nice segue. I mean, and we touched on this a little bit, and we riffed on it before hitting the big red button for recording. Yeah. Take me through, because you mentioned, you ran some marketing teams, and right,
I did.
And you were in sales at some function, or supporting there from the vendor side. What do you think are some cardinal rules security vendors, marketers, sales, what's above, below, and in between are breaking these
Sure.
days?
You have to spend time in the field, whatever in the field means, in your scenario. You have to spend time in the field just gathering empirical data. Right. So like, the Western scientific method is I have a hypothesis, right? I try to disprove it myself, and then I go out and I build a whole bunch of cases to prove that I was correct in my hypothesis. Totally valid approach, right? Empirical research is I'm going to go out and just listen. I'm going to ask you questions and try to understand. I had a marketing team sort of accidentally, if that makes sense. I happened to be a big company and things had been shifted. And so I took over multiple teams at the same time. In other words, I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not a trained marketing person by background. So perhaps because of that, I probably asked wacky questions because I didn't always know. And it dawned on me at one point that my team, such as it was all sitting at corporate, or they were sitting in an office. I happened to be in the corporate headquarters, but I had people in different buildings. But I'm looking at and I'm thinking, and I said, when's the last time you talked to a customer? And I wasn't being pointed or like trying to be, make a jab. I truly was new to understanding this. And there was sort of like just crickets and tumbleweeds, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. How have we not talked to customers? And because I had been in other roles that were very much like day in, day out. And it was sort of, always in front of a customer. Yeah. And then the sort of answer I got was, well, like, oh, we do insert trade show name here. Right. And I'm like, okay, that's a thing. So in some sense, you get a lot of at-bats, like, because you chat with a lot of folks. So there's some utility for sure. But like, so then I made it a thing because I was the director. So I'm like, okay, so everybody's going to travel once a quarter and you're going to go. And my suggestion or strong recommendation is like, one of those trips should be with somebody who's really senior at our company. And it's a very mature / complex customer. And then go meet somebody who has only been here for 30 days. And maybe you don't even meet with the customer or meet with a partner. Just go sit with them and hang out and watch what they do and understand how they approach being an AE, being a sales rep, being an SC, an SA, all the titles are, A, whatever they were. Because we had, technical folks as well. So, and just go spend time with them. I don't know what you'll learn, but I promise you'll learn something. I don't know what it'll be, but I want you to go find an insight. And the only way that I'm aware of doing that, besides just, again, sitting, with yourself, when you don't have enough data, is to go gather empirical evidence. And I don't know where it will lead, but it will lead us somewhere that we're not today.
Well, a bit, you mentioned go sit with them, which I would love to sit with a practitioner in the trenches, but is that realistic?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah. And so in that particular instance, we were embedded into people's process. So we could go do that. Right. And so I'm trying to think of a clean example I give you. So at a period in time later, but it's the same type of company, we were building a solution that then GE wrapped into their solution. Right. So I could actually go in. Right. So you're right. I mean, if you're not, and that there's a physicality to that allowed me to go do that. So I don't know what the exact path would be today to do that, but I would encourage people to figure that out. Like, how can I go spend time with you? So maybe I can't literally, do it, but then use the community to try to understand that, right? I can still, I get hit up with questions every week that I don't know the answer to, and so I have a combo of things. One is I have some standing calls with peers of mine that I don't, air quotes, I don't work with them. They're really just people, and we just have a standing call. We have no agenda. It would be like you and I having a call every, the first Tuesday of every month. And we just sometimes we just chat about our kids and the industry and our spouses or whatever. But often we'll be like, hey, somebody hit me up with this question, or hey, somebody hit me up with this idea, or have you ever seen a slide that shows these two things combined? And so because we have a standing call, like it's kind of a safe spot to do that. And then other ones are impromptu because somebody's asking me a question, and maybe it's timely. Right. And so when I get asked a question like that, I'll say, hey, I can give you my answer. Like I can tell you what I've personally seen, and I can tell you sort of the official textbook's answer, what that is. How much time do we have? If we have time, I'm going to go call Gary Hayslip and Alan Alford and Sean Bowen and Dan Walsh, and I'm going to go down the list, and maybe I won't get everybody, Rock Lambros, but I'm going to try to hit 4 or 5 people who have different backgrounds on purpose and go, hey, somebody asked me this question about XYZ. What do you think? Right. So that's an example, right? So when they call you and go, hey, I'm trying to think of when somebody asks me, how do you document transference of risk? I'm trying to think of a kind of a clean, easy one, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I can tell how we do it, and I think I can tell you how, but I'm like, yeah, let me just maybe, and also things fluctuate, right? So then I'll just send out, whatever, Slack message, Signal, whatever, hey, and I'll get back 4 or 5 answers. And sometimes I'm like, okay, cool. So kind of how I think about it is probably the norm. And sometimes people give me a totally different answer. Oh no, we use XYZ. And those quick answers like that will help put you in the right lane. You know what I mean? To answer that question. So did I get to kind of the answer you're
100%. Yeah, 100%. I love this. So we're heading towards the end of the session.
No.
And I know, but we keep it pretty short because, attention spans these days. But obviously you're more than welcome to come back to the show and we can continue.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
But is there anything you want to impart on the audience today before we sign off?
I would impart on the audience. I have so many things. Two things. I'm going to give you 2 things. One, I think that cognitive biases are likely an underlying impact to why we continue to be challenged with solving. We're never going to solve it, but getting better at cybersecurity. So I would encourage people, if that's interesting to you, to go dig into that and think about how could a cognitive bias be impacting your decision tree that you're making. So that would be one thing. And the second thing is we kind of touched on it, but we skirted around it, and that was soft skills. So I'll leave everybody with a message if they haven't heard me talk about this before. Soft skills, that specific phrase was, I'll say it, invented by a researcher at the behest of the U.S. Army. Okay. And when they were doing this research, those 2 words didn't mean what we think they mean today. When they did the research, they were categorizing tasks that leaders were doing. And it was simply, are these related to turning a wrench, using a weapon, a piece of equipment? And it was everything else, right? And so the researcher just called those soft skills, right? I wish, with the lens of history, it would have been essential skills or people skills or any other phrase, because it took on a connotation. If you look at the engram of when it became popular and it died off and it came back again, when it came back, there's sort of this, at least in American English, there's a connotation, right, that, soft is not hard, and also soft is not tough, right? Right. So it gets kind of muddled up. And so we've kind of had this stigma almost around soft skills that I think unintentionally created a barrier to people learning them. They're not soft skills. That's never what the Army invented it. That's not what they meant. I'm promising people. I've read the white paper. You can go read it. I'm happy to share that. But they meant people skills. And those are more likely to be the differentiator for you if you're going to lead a team, even a small team, right? Of course, you have to have technical acumen. Please don't send me angry. I don't hate service. Of course, you have to have domain experience and technical acumen. Given, that's table stakes, right? I believe that, absolutely. But there's at some point in your career or in your job, that it's not just 10,000 hours, right? If you recall how Malcolm Gladwell popularized that idea, right? It's range, right? Which is David Epstein's book, right? So it's more likely to me, based on all of the history that I read, it's more likely to me that range and somebody from an adjacent field will solve a problem in a unique way. So how do you stretch yourself? And also, if you've transitioned into cybersecurity, which many people have, right? From another field, from the military, from you were a single parent, whatever the background was, all of those learnings that you had before this, they're still valuable. They're still valuable. Bring those with you. Bring all of that stuff with you, not just, I have, XYZ, capture the flag, and those are all awesome, right? But don't forget all the other things that you learned along the way, because we have a lot of problems to solve.
Totally love this. This is awesome. Dutch, always a pleasure. I know we chatted 3 months ago or so.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. Good to see you.
And hopefully in person soon.
I would love that. That'd be great.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Audience First. If you like what you've heard, feel free to follow or subscribe to Audience First on Apple, Spotify, or any of your favorite podcast streamers.